What is the most horrible thing you've seen a child do say that just made your blood boil? I worked at a grocery store during high school as a cashier. One typical busy Sunday, I was ringing out an older lady who was buying among her normal groceries a birthday cake for her husband. They had recently celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary and it was his 79th birthday. She had a large sheet cake with a typical happy birthday greeting and a photo of him at his first birthday after getting back from Europe in World War II. She left it in her cart until I had rang everything else out so not to damage it. A child was with his family in line behind her. The lady begins to lift the cake out and the child screams, "Oh cake, I want some." The lady politely says, "You do? This is for my husband. Do you think he will like it?" The child shrieks, "Yay, I do and I want some." The lady giggles and says, "No hun, I would like to. I have a lot of people waiting for it. Maybe your mummy and daddy will buy you one." The kid, obviously not used to being told no, throws a fit and does a Hulk smash down through the plastic into the cake and giggles and he licks his hands. The lady is speechless. Meanwhile, butthole child's parents are laughing and saying the usual, "Oh, you are so funny." The kid is still giggling and saying how fun it was. I chime in and ask them what their problem was, thinking it is okay for their kid to do that. They just say, "He is 8, what can I do?" I said, "Punish him. Learn how to raise your child." Should I go on? I close my line down and leave them standing there while I go back to the bakery to fix her cake. After about 20 minutes of cake surgery by our bakery ladies, reprinting a new edible image and new piping, the cake was good as new. Parents complained, but after I told my manager, she took my side and all was well. TLDR. Butthole child Hulk smashes an elderly woman's cake for her husband. Child and parents not remorseful. At my job in high school, these parents let their child run around like a maniac in the store while they did their shopping. At one point the kid, who was old enough to know better, picked up a large bottle of cologne and chucked it hard at a toddler-aged kid. The toddler obviously started crying. Of course I found the boy's parents and told them. They showed very little remorse, didn't even bother apologizing to the other parents, and most shocking of all, did not scold their son at all. No wonder why that kid thinks it's okay to behave that way. It was the parents who ended up sickening me more though. This reminds me of when my brother-in-law taught my 2-year-old nephew how to play catch, which just turned into him throwing anything and everything at everyone. It was a rough couple of years. There was a group little kids from down the street. Every day would torment my dog by throwing rocks etc at him and screaming, running up and down the fence. One day, after living there for years and them being a few years older and more bold now, decided it would be a good idea to stick his face against the fence and taunt my dog. Needless to say, my dog lost his crap and bit the kid once. Was about a 1/4 below taking his eye out. He ran home crying. Cut to 30 minutes later with cops and his dickhead father at my house demanding I destroy my dog. Had to put him up for adoption. Family told me a friend on a farm had room for him. Don't know if that was really true or if it was a BS kid's story. To this day, I hate that little crap and think he got only what he deserved. This makes me so unbelievably mad. Growing up, I was taught you respect animals or they can and will frick your crap up, and it will be your fault the dog was on your property. He was defending his home. Little sucker deserved worse than he got. A friend of mine lost her husband. It was the day of his funeral and we were in the car behind the hearse. 2 kids, aged 10-12, on bikes start riding alongside our car, look in the windows and start chanting "Someone died haha, someone died haha." I have never felt the urge to inflict pain on someone so much. You should have swerved into them. My friends and I were standing in the lunch queue at school. One of my friend's parents died and that day was his first day back at school after weeks of absence. Most of the class was aware of what happened. This kid standing behind us noticed him and for no reason said, "Haha, your parents died." We then applied punches to his face. Please tell me the teacher said nothing happened or at least it was self-defense. One time I was eating with my parents and their friends, and their 2 or 3-year-old kid just jumps out of his seat and starts running around the restaurant. 10 minutes later, our waitress brings the kid to the table, saying he almost burned himself on the stove, and the parents just said, "Oh, thanks," and continued their conversation, and let the kid run around again. A child will only burn themselves on the stove once, especially a commercial restaurant stove. Every Christmas I head up to Boston to visit a friend while he's home from college, and his family always hosts a massive New Year's party. There's this one family who brings this young child of theirs, I want to say maybe 10ish years old. Part of the party is spent playing Mario Party and Super Smash Bros on the GameCube in the basement. This most recent New Year's my friend and I and a few others were playing Mario Party in the basement and this kid comes down and screams I wanna play Super Smash Bros and I said sure. After this game and he yelled no, I wanna play now. We said tough luck and turned our heads back to our game. The kid proceeded to grab a pool cue and start screaming and whacking my friend's face. He ended up with a black eye and multiple bruises. After I wrestled the pool cue away from him, his drunk parents came down and after we explained the situation to them, they scolded me for being rough with their kid, and their kid got off scot-free because he didn't know any better. I don't care how old your child is. If he doesn't know any better, you're a bad parent. I want to round up the parents of every single kid in this thread into one big room and explain to them calmly that their children are not special, they are not the son of the earth, and that they need to learn that the world does not revolve around them. Then I'd punch them all in the face, one by one. I was swimming with my 3-year-old son at the public pool. We were in the shallow end by the steps and he was tiptoeing along to keep his head above water when a wild ball appears. My son reached an arm out to touch it, still bouncing on the tippiest of toes when a snaggle-toothed, weird-shaped head 9-year-old pushed him down and under. I reached in and grabbed my son by the back of the neck as I was certain he would be swallowing water. I took a quick look around for a watching parent. There was none. I proceeded to sweep the kid's feet out from under him just as he was laughing about the ball hitting him in the head. Success kid JPG. Pool story, bro. My mom works at a barn just across from our house. It goes house, pasture full of horses, neighbor's house, then barn. So one day, I simply look outside at the beautiful creatures only to find the neighbor's kids literally leaned over the gates and slapping the horses across the face. Knowing my mom adores their horses, I went to her and said, "Mom, little girls are slapping their horses." To which her response was this, "No they're not, witness crime, oh my god," and then yelling, "Stop slapping my freaking horses." They didn't do it ever again. My mom's a badass over here. I like your mom. I saw some kids, probably around 10 or 12 years old, laughing it up in an alleyway I was walking down on my way back home one day. As I drew closer, the kids noticed me and scrammed. I came to the place where the kids had been playing and there was a kitten, twitching in its death throes. The kids had been throwing rocks at it. Lost my hope for the future and humanity, right there. I'm fairly sure this is how serial killers are created. I was at the library when a family came in, teenage brother with several little sisters. The mother was obviously frazzled and stressed. The brother whined and complained the whole time they were there, a real shithead. When they were lined up to check out their books, one of his sisters stood right in front of the counter. Her mouth was the exact height of the edge. The brother stood right behind her and shoved her hard against the counter. She smacked the crap out of her mouth and started crying. It took everything in me not to beat the crap out of that butthole. This made me fume. I was in grade 6 I believe. I had just lost my mom to a long battle of cancer. I was outside playing when this kid and I start arguing. Something gets said. He replies with, "Yeah, well your mom looked at you and died." At that he knew I was angry. He started to run away as fast as he could. I caught up to him, tackled him down, and then punched him until the teacher came and stopped us. The teacher asked what happened. I told him what he had said. The teacher understood and just wanted us to forget it. We did. Reading what that kid said reminded me of what a bunch of kids at school said to me when I was 7. "You're so ugly that when you were born your mum took one look at you and got rid of you. I am adopted." Reading this thread reminds me that kids can be cruel, but often don't understand the consequences of what they say. I'm currently an au pair looking after 3 children. One day the middle child had a few friends over who were just leaving when I started my shift. I went upstairs and the girl's room was a disaster. Crap just everywhere. I informed the girl that she must help me clean her room, being nice. I didn't even have to help. She threw a huge fit and started crying, and when I asked her to hand me a pile of cards she kicked them and they went all over the room. I told her to pick those up for doing that and she stopped crying and stared at me with an intense fury and replied, "Why should I? Isn't that your job?" with emphasis in tone on the job. She is 7. I wanted to throw her down the stairs right then and there. 7-year-old FWP. My room was a mess and my au pair wouldn't even clean it. I don't know what people expect their kids to turn out like when they have to hire other people to raise their children. There was a teacher at my school who had a car accident. She was in the hospital for about 3 weeks until she died from her injuries. They called all of her students to the auditorium to inform them of her passing. Immediately after the announcement, some little crap stood up, didn't even wait to be called on, and indignantly asked how this would affect her grade. This'll be buried, but what the heck? It's a fond memory. Over the past couple of years, I've spent a lot of time on the Washington State ferry system going from Anacortes to San Juan Island. Depending on the route, it can be anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours in an enclosed space. When it's cold out, screw being above decks, with several other people. The particular ferry we were on that day was a 2-hour ride, and the then boyfriend and me went up to the loungeway general area to take team nap, because we'd decided to walk on instead of drive. This little kid, probably 5 or 6, decided that all 3 of the racing arcade games on that level were his and his alone. He would scream back to his parents for quarters, and they would dutifully walk across the ferry under the weighted glares of every other passenger to feed the little hellion more coins to stuff the machines with. One of the machines expired, by virtue of time, and a timid looking kid, maybe 12, came over and put his own quarters into the machine and sat down to play. The little crap went ballistic, flailing fists and teeth and tears and expletives, and the older kid just shrank away. I was finally about to stand up because, seriously, enough, when out of the corner of my eye I saw this straight-backed, button-up shirt-wearing man in his 80s striding towards the 2 of them. The man reaches the flailing crotch fruit, picks him up by the back of his pants and shirt, walks him over to the table where the parents are dazedly staring off into space, deposits their child firmly, face down, on the table and says calmly and clearly, "Deal with your child before I am tempted to deal with him further," and looked meaningfully to the double doors that led to the edge of the boat. That man is one of my heroes, and I hope to live long enough that it's socially acceptable for me to punish other people's kids. I hope to live long enough that it's socially acceptable for me to punish other people's kids. Dang straight. I used to be pretty heavily involved in volunteering for this after-school violin program in a mostly Hispanic neighboring town. The woman who ran it had a heart of gold and worked really hard to make it a really fun community program with the parents and siblings involved, so she threw a pool party that all the families were invited to every year at my parents' house. One very active student in the program brought his mother and 2 younger brothers. One of the brothers was probably in 1st grade or so and already had a horrible reputation as this awful hellion. He had been expelled from kindergarten for throwing a tantrum and screaming curses at the teacher when she tried to calm him down. I heard it took several adults to drag him out of the room when it happened. Anyway, at the pool party he was acting pretty normally until my friend who had offered to help lifeguard told him to stop splashing. To put this in context, my friend is black, from an inner city upbringing, and came to my very white town to go to high school, so she is understandably a little race conscious. So when this kid tells her "Don't tell me what to do, Enga," God, I can't even write it, she just bursts into tears. We kicked the kid out of the pool and explained to her that he was just a tiny butthole, but she was inconsolable for a long time. She was just trying to be nice and help out at a party. What a horrible child. That's when you hold him under until he stops splashing. That's not your spot. This isn't even your house. You don't belong here. Dad's girlfriend's kids when I was babysitting the little shoots so they didn't have to go to their grandmother's house. It was the house my dad and girlfriend bought together. Wanted to smack them so hard. You should follow them around and fart on everything they love. I was working at a grocery store when I heard a little boy, 5 maybe, ask his mom to buy him one of those crappy little toys that seem to be everywhere. She calmly told him to put it back and he threw an absolute fit. She kept telling him to put the dang thing back and he finally screamed out, "If dad was alive maybe you wouldn't be such a fricking bee." There was a brief pause and you could see on the little bastard's face that he knew he fricked up. The woman backhanded this kid right across the face and knocked him into the shelf. Bottles of salad dressing went everywhere. She picked the screaming kid up and took him outside to her car, came back in and helped me clean up the mess, then finished shopping. I wish more parents were as awesome as her. Beast mode engaged. This is probably going to seem minor in comparison to all the other comments I've read here, but here's my story. When I was in 8th grade, they cancelled the school buses. My neighbor at the time happened to work at the school I went to, so she offered to drive me in. It was pretty cool at first, but her child was a little hellion. One time we were in the car together, and she called me a loser for liking books. I was just blown away that a 5-year-old would try to insult me like that when I'd done nothing but be pleasant to her. Her mom did nothing. She was pretty much a passive-aggressive bee though. She started to drop me off further and further away from the school, drop me off like 2 hours early, or drive past the school to drop her daughter off, which made me late for class. She'd also lock the car door on me, and refused to let me out until I said thank you. My stepsister is 18 years old and hits her mom, screams, slams doors and breaks things when she gets upset. This is a daily occurrence. I recently told her that if she were to ever act that way towards me I would call the police. She told me she would just tell them that I had abused her and that they would believe her because she's a girl. Her mom has allowed the daughter to be in complete control of the household and to act like this ever since the daughter was 7 years old, when her father died unexpectedly. I think we share the same sister. My 17-year-old younger sis acts exactly like this, and so does my mom, for that matter. I once saw a mother and 2 children, a boy and girl both less than 5. The children were bickering playfully when the boy said, "Oh yeah, well dad wanted an abortion." The mother, playing on her phone, didn't say do a thing. I mean, what clearly happened was that the kids heard and quoted part of an argument, but still. So messed up. I wear kilts regularly. A few days ago I decided to walk up to the store while in my kilt. On the way there I had to pass an elementary school that was just getting out. And holy freaking crap. I wanted to smack this one group of 10-year-olds. One of them starts trying to get in my face saying, "Why don't you put on some pants you frickin' gaff," while all the other C in his group were yelling similar things. It took all of my willpower to not pick the little crap up and throw him under a bus. I could imagine a large, hairy kilted man brandishing a small child over his head and caber tossing the sucker under a bus. I was at a Chinese New Year's party, and being the only teenager at the party, mom didn't trust me being alone in the house. I became best friends with the dog. There were also a bunch of little kids at the party, so a little boy wanted to play with the dog. His definition of play was grabbing the dog's fur, gouging its eyes, and yanking its tail. The whole time he was laughing maniacally. Luckily for him, this dog was really shy and didn't kill the little crap. I told the kid to stop, and he didn't, so I had to play keep the kid away from the dog for the rest of the night. I was babysitting my dad's ex-girlfriend's, was a current at the time, niece, and I couldn't get her to behave. She'd call me crude names, was attempting to paint on the carpet of my dad's living room and threw several tantrums. So I stuck her in timeout in what I believed to be a relatively safe corner, next to the kitchen counter. When I turned my back, she stood up and grabbed the cordless phone off the counter, and threw it at me, beaming me in the back. I was so enraged I grabbed her by the shirt and dragged her to a different corner away from anything and everything she could grab, and left her there for 3 hours. Every time she walked out of the corner I dragged her back. Our little girl chucked a phone at me. Repetition of putting her back to where you wanted her to sit was exactly how you are supposed to handle a situation like that. Very well played. My sister is mentally disabled. She has severe scoliosis, and her face is disfigured because of her medication. There have been instances of children in church teasing her and calling her ugly. My neighbor's bastardy little brother needed to tell me she was ugly for some goddamn reason. Freaking hate kids. You make it sound like being in church makes them better people automatically. I was at Target and a woman with 2 small children was pushing a cart. The youngest was maybe a year old and was riding in the seat. The older one was a girl, and couldn't have been more than 4 or 5. The older one was hanging off the side of the cart. The mother, in a very soft motherly voice, said, "Honey, could you not do that? It makes it very hard for mommy to push the cart." The child looks up her mother with this total spawn of Satan look and says to her mother, "That's not true. You're just being a bee." The mother just sort of shook her head and kept going. I stopped in my tracks and had to compose myself for a minute. All I wanted to do was go smack that little girl in the mouth. I have a feeling the one you should be smacking is the girl's dad. I had just got off from a crappy day at work and was walking into Walmart to get some groceries. All of a sudden this kid in his mother's arms reaches over and pinches the crap out of me. Normally I would have just kept walking, but the kid was like 6 and his mom was carrying him like a baby, so I knew he knew better. I look down at my arm and there are nail marks that are turning red from where he was still holding on. I told the kid to let go and pushed his arm from me, and his mother started cussing me out in Spanish, telling me not to touch her baby. I hate children. The mother sounds like a bee. I mean, show your kids some discipline, people. I'm slipping this in here for the few people that make it this far down the thread. I'm also going to go opposite with the instructions as well. I was working at a 24-hour drug store in Denver in the mid-90s. There were a lot of Russian emigres that were living together close to the store. Every few days an entire group would do their shopping together. There were about 4 sets of older people and they entered the store, shopped and checked out together. One of the sets brought their granddaughter. This adorable little girl had blonde hair, a beautiful smile and bright blue eyes. If you saw her, you'd think, if a kid ended up looking this cute, having kids wouldn't be so bad. As each couple was rung up, this little girl translated everything. She communicated in English and I assume Russian between the grandparents and the checkers. This included handling the cash. She did this for everyone's shopping until they were all done. I approve of this child. This is only horrible because she was repeating what her parents said. First grader, "I want to be white." Me, "Why? You're perfect just how you are." First grader, "My mom says white people get whatever they want." Me, "Really? I guess that's why your mom is driving a Mercedes and I'm driving a rusted Escort." In the kid's defense, you never stated you didn't want a rusted Escort. I once witnessed a young boy screaming at his mother that he wanted sweets, and then repeatedly punching her in the breast until she gave in and bought him a cookie. What a brat. I worked at a bank that gave kids lollipops. I handed this boy one and he proceeds to open it. His dad says say thank you, and little C says no and his dad just smiles at me. I don't have any stories, but I will say this. If you have a child who acts like a C in public, and when she does you just laugh it off, you are a terrible parent. I hate when people don't discipline their children. I hate children in general, but crap, don't do that. Really annoys me when kids throw tantrums and break stuff and the parents just ignore it. I used to teach preschool. We had one 4-year-old boy named Clay who looked exactly like Chucky, who had no business whatsoever being around other children. One day he managed to turn on the hose and drenched me so completely that I had to drive home and change. He was notorious for stealing shoes and throwing them into the pool. But the worst thing he did was rip the spinner off of a twister board and stab me in the stomach with it as hard as he could. I hated that little crap. I came into this thread expecting to laugh at stories of spoiled little brats throwing tantrums in supermarkets. Instead, I'm just really sad. I used to work at a fairly large supermarket on the bread and cake section. One day, as I was working away minding my own business, there was a family deciding which birthday cake to buy. The girl picked up a boxed cake, then proceeded to punch it very hard a few times, then put it back. Her mother didn't do a thing about it. The cake was totally wrecked and had to be binned. My cousin was freaking terrible as a kid. His mom had had 4 miscarriages before she had him, so she always treated him like an angel, no matter what he did. One weekend he stayed with my grandparents and they took him to a baseball game even though they didn't have much money. They bought him a bat with the team name on it because he begged for it, and they always tried to spoil us as much as they could. Then he asked for a jersey, too, and they politely said no, they simply couldn't afford it. He then said to my grandpa, "Well, I can just hit you in the head with this bat and take your wallet," with a crap-eating grin on his face. What he didn't remember is that my grandpa was a high school superintendent for nearly 40 years and doesn't take crap from anyone, especially bratty kids. Apparently my grandpa grabbed his arm, put him over his knee and spanked the crap out of him in front of everyone. I think my cousin was 12 or so at the time. They took him back to his parents' house and told my aunt that they'd let him visit again when he was more well-mannered. I laugh every time I think about it. Your grandpa is a freaking boss. My roommate has a large family and one of his young sizes, Sally Ann, who is currently 12 years old, is pure evil. When she was about 2 or 3 years old, she threatened to kill my roommate John, who then responded that she couldn't do that. She said I could if I had a stick with fire at the end of it. When I was in middle school, a group of kids actively made fun of another student because his dad died on Christmas Eve. Reddit: what is the worst thing you've ever seen a child do? A few years ago in high school, a girl in the grade below me died of complications from meningitis. She was a really great person and had a lot of friends, and the school mourned for a couple weeks, as it was a very sad and sudden death of such a young girl. Anyway, this bee in my Spanish class speaks up the day after the other girl's death and says, "Who gives a crap? I hurt my knee last week playing basketball and nobody did anything for me like this." The entire class stops whatever they're doing and gives her a death stare, and her friends just fake laugh and try to pretend that she didn't just say what she says. Apparently she got into deep crap with administration after that. Not deep enough to override those 16 years of self-entitled, egocentric mental development, I'm sure. There was this kid, really quiet kind too, who had these twitches during classes. Few months passed and he kept twitching around. We asked him about it and he said that it's nothing. Later on he skipped school for a few days and his mom called the teacher that he's being bullied during class. Apparently another kid, much bigger too, behind him kept poking him with a needle for months. He was so scared of the bully that he didn't want to tell anyone. This is one of the most depraved forms of bullying I have ever heard of. I became real attached to my first grade teacher, and when I was in second grade she died. I went to a private school, so they held a small funeral service at the church there and invited the students to attend. I started crying partway as it affected me so much. The kids in the next grade started pointing at me and laughing. Buttholes. They were buttholes. That's sweet that you cared so much. I know I'd cry if some of the teachers I had died. They were great. I remember first year of high school, there was a kid whose father died. He wasn't a popular kid, not a bad guy, just a bit too much of a smart butt. His dad had a heart attack. He had a week or two off. Everyone kind of felt bad for him. First week he's back at school and we have pay. Pay is usually done with another class. Out of nowhere, one of the more popular kids, from the other class, is "Although I John, did your dad die?" Everyone suddenly goes quiet thinking WTF. The kid responds with "Yeah," holding back tears. The popular kid, out of nowhere, drops a "what if." Probably one of the most awkward situations I have ever in. I honestly couldn't believe someone could be that blatantly cold. I'll never be able to understand how people can do or say things like this. My friend's mom died of cancer when she was young. A teacher found out and she asked politely that she wouldn't tell anyone. The teacher told the class. People crack jokes about her dead mother all the time. It's horrible. I've seen a child mock another because her mother killed herself. Then he implied that she was the reason her mother killed herself. I, too, have seen children be dongs about death. The quiet child's dad died when he was 13. Had an asthma attack in the garden whilst his son was upstairs. His mother spiraled into alcoholism after that and people actually used it in arguments against him. Your mum hates you because you didn't save your dad, or just simply how your dad died and you didn't notice. The worst part is people would actually defend the abuse if you ever stuck up for him. Boggles my mind. I keep reading all of these stories, and no joke, if I was a teacher and heard this going on, they would come to the principal's office with me immediately. If the principal didn't give a crap, kid would get nose to the wall timeout time. A kid mocked me in the week after my father had committed suicide. You know when you read about people going blind with rage, At 7 years old, I got that and rained punches on him. They had to pull me off him as I repeatedly rammed my knee into his face. He was taken to hospital. I was taken home. He never looked the same after that night. I never felt the same. I'm sorry to hear, man, but I am glad you did what you did. No one should ever get away with that. Also, the line "he never looked the same after that night, I never felt the same" needs to be in a book. Wonderfully worded. I used to teach in Korea. One of my students would openly scream profanities at female students and then slap them, punch and kick them. My co-workers wouldn't discipline him because his father is in politics and he learned this abusive nature that is directed to his mother and sister. The kid even told me in English, "I can do anything. F you foreigner." Then he slaps this girl's phone out of her hand and pushes her into the window. I knew I couldn't do anything to him, but one day walking at night, this little punk is shining a laser pointer in my eyes. I chase him down in the park, grab hold of his laser pointer and cell phone, throw them as far as I could into the forest, and then slapped him in the face. He bawled his eyes out. Not my proudest moment, but I think he needed it. At least in my class he wouldn't dare get out of his seat or open his mouth anymore. Not my proudest moment, but I think he needed it. Agreed. Definitely not professional, but that little shitbag needed at least one person to stand up to him. The teachers infuriate me even more than the kids in this story. Kids are buttholes. Teachers are adults responsible for preventing bullying. There is no excuse for that. No excuse other than to not getting fired for harassments to the students. Patents love to blame the teachers and everyone else instead of having their little angel be in trouble. A girl in my school had some growing disorder, so she was roughly the size of a 2-year-old and had to use a wheelchair. One day over the intercom, the school announced that she had died in her sleep the night before. One of the kids in my class said, "I'm glad she died. She wasted food and oxygen for the people who deserve it." Everyone laughed. And that's when you stand up, knock him out of his chair with a haymaker, and sit back down without saying a word. I saw a group of 4 boys throwing rocks at a dying kitten in the gutter. Little bastards took off running when I stopped the car. Poor little thing died by the time I could wrap him in a shirt. It was so sick sad that I cried every time I thought about it. Every year, until a few years ago, the ducks haven't returned to that pond anymore after winter. There used to be kids in our village that, during springtime, picked up the little ducklings and smashed them on the pavement. When I was in high school, my father was arrested and sent to prison. I received an anonymous note from someone in my school that he was getting fricked in the butt in jail. Ugh. My dad died when I was 15. I walked in and found him. This little bee at school, sophomore in HS at the time, spread the rumor that he committed suicide. It was my first day back, died on WED, I was back on MON, and I had to deal with so much crap. Sympathy, questions about how he died, and then finally people asking me why he killed himself. Horrid. I've seen an extremely nice kid go show his new toy to his friends, only to have it snatched out of hands by one of them. They played with it for the extent of the time that they were there, paying no attention to the kid whose toy it was, but the kid almost seemed content, knowing that they actually thought something he had was cool. After they got bored of it, they went and dropped it back in the kid's lap and told him that the toy sucked and that he should have gotten something else. I almost cried. This happened to me in kindergarten. The difference though is after my new friend was done with my stuffed penguin, she threw it on the 2-story roof. I was inconsolable until the janitor got out his giant ladder and saved my buddy. Funny, I still remember that so vividly a quarter century later. I honestly don't know why I keep looking into these dang questions on Ask Reddit. The responses just pee me off, gross me out, or disturb me. Freaking kids. This was in big school, but this kid hit and killed a pedestrian 2 weeks after getting his license. Well, it was a small town, so talk got out quick, so first period the next day a girl says, "Hey, so I hear you're killing people now." And I on multiple occasions would see him walking in the hall and people would jump out of the way and yell, "Whoa, don't kill me too." High school has no mercy. On the flip side, a kid I went to HS with snorted a bunch of coke and went for a drive. He ended up killing a boy in our grade, that boy's brother, and their 2-year-old niece. People gave him pats on the back for it because the kids he killed were from Burma and didn't speak English well. Oh, and another one. I was caused, whoops, a kitchen fire when I was in the 8th grade. My arm elbow was severely burned. When I went back to school, I had to keep my arm in my lap because even though it was all bandaged up, the girl next to me didn't want it anywhere near her. Then in 10th grade, it was all healed and scared up. It turned into some kind of keloid scar where it was all raised and straight up purple. I was taking a test and had my arm resting on my desk. The way the room was set up, there were about 10 desks facing one way and the other 10 or so were facing those 10. Well, the guy directly in front of me, both in the front row, facing each other, looked over at me in the middle of the quiet room test and was like, "Get that disgusting thing off the desk. I can't concentrate." I went and had surgery on it the next week. 3 surgeries later and it still looks like crap. Sucker. Throwaway account. Scout camp. A tent of about 8 kids, ranging from 11-14 years of age. The 2 eldest lads in the tent decided they would pick on the smallest chapter. He was about 11. They were 14-15. They held their big lighters upside down, heating up the metal part of it, then burned the kid on the face and arms. And they tape recorded it. I can't remember at this stage why we didn't do anything. We were all in there. It was nighttime. And when I think about it and the consequences, I always feel deeply ashamed. I guess we were just too young or intimidated. But maybe it was just easier to lie there and pretend to be asleep while he was screaming. I was 12 or 13. Somebody did tell and they were caught. I'm not sure exactly what kind of punishment they got. It was a school-related scout camp. But certainly something happened. Not as much as expulsion though, which is what should have happened. And there was definitely no police involvement, which there also should have been. Fast forward some years and the little lad is grown up and in court for the murder of his girlfriend and her mother. During the court it turned out that he'd been subjected to a litany of abuse as a child. Domestic. From his father. And when I think about what those older kids did to him, I'd love to go back to that time and stand up for him. Bravery in hindsight doesn't make me much of a person, but there you go. I have no doubt what happened to him in that tent played a big part in how his life turned out and how that impacted on others. I also hope those 2 have had horrible lives themselves. Or are dead. I'd prefer that. You were young. Don't blame yourself. There was this one kid who has a mental disability. Extreme case. He would get so frustrated and upset for the littlest of things. One day he brought a dog to her school. The dog wore a vest that says therapy dog. The principal and teachers that he's in the class in would tell us that the dog is only meant to help him cope with his frustration. They told us not to pet him without the boy's permission. You can't even look at the dog's direction. Doing so will lead you a referral to the office. The kids in the class would usually pat the dog behind his back and point at the kid and laugh at him when he was walking with the dog in the hallway. One kid even put a piece of chocolate on the floor next to the dog. He was happy though that he can be with the dog. Sometimes he would defend himself and the kids would pick on him and laugh at him more. I freaking hate the kids in my high school. If someone willfully tried to poison my dog, I would end them. I once knew a kid that was a little messed up in the head. He looked like a huge hillbilly mental case. He was nice though, but very socially inept. He was molested as a child, and he had PTSD from it. For many people, smells trigger memories, but there was a TV commercial that was his trigger. The Oscar Mayer hot dog. He was molested while this song played and several others. I only knew because I heard my parents talking about it in the back of a very loud bus one day. I noticed him lying down in his seat and several other people standing up around him singing the Oscar Mayer Wiener song. Their voices were forceful, like they were trying to hit him with it. He is crying and screaming and trying to plug his ears while writhing around in his seat. Bus driver got on because it was time to head out of the school and everything stopped, but he ran off of the bus crying and everyone laughed. I never saw him again. Kids in my class teased a girl because her mum went skydiving and the parachute didn't open. Truly fricked up. My friend made fun of my cousin who was seriously injured in the war, and how my mother had breast cancer. I am no longer affiliated with her. When I was a kid, my brother died. I was 8, so I talked about it. My classmates always used to ask me about it. Hey Silgranus, Her Silgranus, remember your brother who died? I'm a teacher and had a student give out rewards to students who would be mean to a certain student in the class. The sad thing was every student in the class of 27 4th graders did it. I finally had one student confess to me what was going on. Called the kid's mom and she asked which student was being bullied and then responded, well, I can understand that. I have never been made speechless by a parent until then. When I was in 7th grade, there was a mentally retarded girl. I don't know what her exact issue was, but there was something mentally wrong. The kids used to throw coins at her and tell her to dance for more. She didn't understand and wanted the change for soda machines. I used to try to get her to just sit down with me or even just give her a buck, but she just couldn't understand cruelty, I suppose. It used to make my blood boil when she would call them her friends. That's so douchy. The only consolation I get is that she didn't understand that they were making fun of her. It's hard to be hurt by something you don't know is supposed to be hurtful. Also, thanks for not pretending like you didn't see anything, or, God forbid, joining in. I remember in 8th grade, a number of guys from my class made fun of this girl who had big ears. It also didn't help that her mom went out and bought lunch for her and her friends every day from places like Applebee's, Ruby Tuesdays, etc. Eventually, she got teased so much that she ended up getting ear surgery to reduce them. Unfortunately, the teasing didn't end until our grade graduated. Posted this before in a similar thread. Even relating this story makes me sick to my stomach. When I was in the 4th grade, a classmate of mine lost his mother to cancer. Not long afterwards, we had a show and tell day where we were to bring in something that was special to us. This boy brought in a metal slinky and explained that the reason it was important to him was because it was the last thing his mother got him before she died. Afterwards, as we were all walking to the cafeteria, one of the well-known little shitheads, actually the smallest kid in school but a huge bully because his father was a coach and his mother the school nurse, ran up to him and asked to see the slinky. The boy who lost his mother, thrilled that someone was actually speaking to him as he was normally ostracized and picked on, gladly handed it over to him. The little shithead then violently tied the slinky into several knots and threw it on the ground, ruining it. He ran away laughing to the cheers of the other students as the other boy just stared at the ground expressionless and obviously lost. The poor kid didn't even cry. I would have beat the ever little crap out of the kid. Probably killed him. Some teachers suck. My sister had a classmate whose mother was their homeroom teacher. So for her birthday, my sister was throwing this big birthday party and of course invited the whole class. My parents spend all this money and the day of the party comes and no one from school shows up. The next Monday my sister's teacher, classmate's mom, come up to my sister and says, you know why no one went to your party? Because my daughter decided to have a party on the same day and everyone that came to her party got extra credit points. This is freaking ridiculous. That is so fricked up. Christ, that is so wrong. This isn't so awful but here it goes. My friend and I found these spiked balls that grew on a tree near our house. When you crush them up they turn into a powder fiber that itches like crazy. We started to collect these and sell them in plastic bags to kids at school. 25c for a small one and 50c for a big one. About a week later the school started to mention it and complained about all the kids ending up at the nurse because of itching powder. At that time we decided to bow out of the game. Altogether we made about $20. That's a heck of a lot of money to an 8-year-old. Right before my Christmas break in 8th grade, one of my good friends lost his sister 6 days before Christmas. She was killed in a head-on collision with a drunk driver at about 7 in the evening on her first night back home from college. He was originally supposed to be in the car, but she told him they would hang out another night. Once getting back to school, most people were very sympathetic as his sister was a very accomplished runner and babysat for a few dozen families and a lot of the kids knew her. But there was a small group of about 3 kids who made fun of him on a daily basis, saying if he liked his Christmas present and making up gruesome stories about her death and some even drawing cartoons about her accident. The same thing happened about 2 years prior to another kid whose dad shot himself with a shotgun. Relentless teasing. People making shotgun sounds around him and saying he didn't have any brains, just like his dad. He eventually left the school until we started 9th grade. My daughter is 2 years old and her cousin who is 4 was over. My daughter loves to dance, which really just involves her jumping and spinning and waving her arms. Well, we were outside and I turned on some music, so naturally she starts dancing and laughing because it's her favorite thing in the world to do. Then her cousin just stares at her with a disgusted face and says that's how she dances. When my daughter heard her say that and saw the expression on her face, she stopped and kind of looked down and was sad the rest of the day. That's the first time I realized as a parent that people are going to do crappy things to your kids, and sadly you can't protect them from getting their feelings hurt. This broke my heart. Coming from a woman pregnant with her first, this terrifies me. I don't want to think how awful it will feel the first time this realization sets in. Told this in another thread, describing a particular experience when I was a 3rd grade teacher. I had a student whose parents were abusive. It was evident by the physical marks. However, school administration could never do anything for multiple reasons. Anyways, the cops were called to boy's house one afternoon just a few weeks before summer vacation. They discovered that the boy had tortured local neighborhood cats by trapping them in makeshift cardboard cages and then lighting the box on fire. Apparently he used a magnifying glass to sear the cat's fur and would let them out disfigured but alive so he could continue at another point. Most were stray cats, however the cops finally found out when a passerby saw the kid stick a firework up a cat's behind and thereafter throw it hammer style across an overpass. Really fricked and never heard from the kid since. The parents ended up splitting and pretty sure the kid went to live with his grandmother. TLDR. Sadist student operates a cat version of Guantanamo Bay. Gets caught after engaging in a public display of live fireworks. I would not want to be that kid's grandmother. I had a pretty yuck childhood. Mom used to whip me with the electric cord. Threatened to kill me for slight infractions. I was really socially awkward and never had clean clothes. Malnourished. Always sick. Basically, I was the freak kid in grade school. One day a neighbor kid invited me over to play at her house. I was a latchkey kid and wasn't allowed to leave the house when mom was at work. But the offer to actually play with another kid was too good to be true, so I disobeyed and went over to her house thinking that I'd just go home before mom got home from work. I was over there playing when I heard my mother's VW bug drive by and lost my crap. Started crying, begging the mom not to send me home because my mom might kill me, which I thought was true given that I'd get the life beat out of me for missing a spot on the dishes. I didn't dare disobey. The girl's mother went and got my mother, who of course acted all nice and normal in front of her, and then beat the fricking heck out of me as soon as we walked in the door. I still have physical scars from that one. The next day I went to school with lash marks and bruises. The little girl told everyone that my mommy beat me. Some of the worst bullies actually followed me home from school that day, taunting me with songs of, "Your mama beats you. Your mama beats you and you deserve it. Comma Jesus. That was terrible. TLDR. Mom beat the crap out of me. Adults did nothing to protect me. The other kids made fun of me for it. God, I am so sorry. Your childhood. It was awful." I have a cousin who, for a variety of reasons I will never speak to or be in a 100-mile radius of, would do very cruel things to animals. When we were children, he threw a rock at a dove and knocked its eye out. He stopped throwing things at it because I began to cry. He then tried to cheer me up by attempting to drown some kittens. These are just some of the lesser evil things he ended up doing. Pretty sure that is an early sign of a sociopath or a serial killer. Ex-co-workers would make fun of me behind my back because I was raped by a co-worker. They liked my co-worker more than they liked me. That's fricked up. I don't even know what to say to that. Sue them all. This isn't so tragic, but my teacher told everyone I had Asperger's syndrome. They would all call me retard and be physical. Sucked. Jesus freaking Christ. I snapped one day. I would have all sorts of accidents, and when they are like, dude, WTF man, you stained my clothes with your cola. Are you freaking stupid? I'd say you told me I was a retard. So I guess that is correct. Had couple of friends who would keep their mouth shut since they understood that the bullies deserved it. Besides, I realized I could get away with any form of punishment because I was disabled, according to my dumb teacher, and anyone who chose to bully me would be very severely punished. Thank God I increased my dosage of Ritalin and that crap a year later. I was probably in 7th grade On a field trip with my class, a few classmates found 2 kittens and their mother in a patch of grass under a tree. The mom took one of them to safety ASAP, but they managed to grab the second before she returned. The mother kitty had to watch as 3 of my classmates kicked the kitten around until it couldn't even meow anymore. By the time one of us got our supervisor, one big dude that was barely over 20, the kitten was bloodied and dead. The supervisor cried when he saw the mangled kitten and the lamenting mother, and when the bullies called him a girly girl over it, he snapped and beat the living snot out of them, still crying over the kitten. And when I say beat, I mean broken noses, bruised eyes, proper frick up. The supervisor got a stern talking to and the kids got a trip to the counselor, grounded, and had to stay 3 extra hours in school every day for about 3 months. It's been so many years, but I still remember exactly what the mother cat looked and sounded like, and still hate those guys with a passion. Freaking monsters. They're still cruel as frick, and one of them went to jail for beating his girlfriend because she hadn't finished dinner by the time he got home. I remember learning about the Holocaust in the 6th grade. I told some friends about how my grandmother visited some of the concentration camps when she lived in Germany while her father was in the service. These kids thought I meant my grandmother actually lived in a concentration camp. They made jokes, poked fun, a bunch of stuff you would find inappropriate. Even though my grandmother didn't actually go through that, it still surprises me how mean kids can be towards things like this. My story is about the terrible thing I did as a kid. There was a girl in my class in elementary school whose family didn't have a lot of money. Her parents both worked multiple jobs, so they weren't around a lot to tell her to do important things like shower or change her clothes every day. She lived down the block from me, so I would play with her if no one else was around, but mostly I would pick on her. It was my daily mission at school to make her cry. I was usually successful. One day after school, the 2 of us were on the playground. I was waiting for my mom to pick me up. I'm not sure why she was hanging around, but I was doing my usual thing with her, playing with her on the swings while saying mean things to her and walking away from her to make her upset. She started to cry. I laughed. Then I noticed my mom's car in the parking lot and ran over without even saying goodbye to this girl. I went to open the front passenger door to the car and my mother said, "Number," in the back. I got in the back and started chattering about my day and asking what was for dinner. Blah blah blah. My mother never said a word. This was not like her and I knew something was wrong, so I asked if she was okay. No response. I asked if she was mad at me. No response. This went on for the entire ride home, and by the time we got there, I was crying so hysterically over the fact that my mom wouldn't talk to me that I could barely open the car door. When we got in the house, she finally spoke to me and she said, "This is how you made that girl feel today." She had seen my entire playground performance from the car. I apologized to that girl the next day and I never picked on her again. To this day I get a sick feeling in my stomach when I think of my sweet, soft-spoken mother refusing to talk to me or let me ride next to her because she was so disappointed in me. To think I intentionally caused a similar feeling in someone else sickens me still. Reddit. What's the harshest thing you've heard a child say, with complete obliviousness to how harsh it is? When I was a kid, 11, my father was hospitalized with cancer. I was at a friend's house, playing video games. His little brother, about 5 at the time, asked, "Why are you happy right now? Your dad is gonna die." That wasn't a happy day. Yours will too, you little crap. My daughter was around 5 and was oblivious to the adult themes of Spaceballs. She loved the movie for all of its wackiness. When all of the extended family got together once, she decided it would be a good time to be funny. Buttholes. I'm surrounded by buttholes. Damn it, you accidentally had my kid. Give it back. We were taking group photos. Me, my husband and his 2 kids. We all posed for a few. Then my 8-year-old stepson says, "Okay, now let's take some with just the family." Ouch. My stepmom would always take photos of all of the whole family and then one without me and my brother. The ones of all of us would go in books and the ones of just them would go on the wall. Apparently, when I was little I walked up to a friend of my mother's and said, "You're looking fat today," in a nonchalant voice. This one is my favorite. It's like you were trying to make normal, adult conversation but failed miserably. My gran took my cousin to the shop when she was a lot younger. My cousin had previously asked our gran why she didn't wear trousers, and my gran said that it was because she was too fat. My cousin pointed at a woman larger than my gran in the shop and said, loudly, "Granny, that lady's wearing trousers and she's much fatter than you." My gran had dementia towards the end of her life. We took her to the movies one night and as we were leaving we noticed a very large woman walking just ahead of us, so my gran said, rather loudly, "That woman's backside is 5x handles across cringe." Standing in line at Best Buy on Christmas Eve, my then 4-year-old cousin tapped the very large black man with a full grill in front of us, put her hands on her hips, and said, "Man, I don't know what is up with your teeth, but I think I like it." I think that is the exact reaction that people with grills are looking for. Used to work as a cashier at a pharmacy. Little girl comes up and says, "What's wrong with your face? You look like a monster. Born with cleft lip and palate. You should tell kids that you're half cat." Mom, come give me a hug. 3-year-old child. No, Mom. AWW, if you don't give me a hug I'm going to cry. Child, cry a little bit then. That kid will not be guilted into crap. Can't wait to see them react to high school breakups. Mom, why do so many fat people wear shirts in the pool? You can still tell that they are fat. Me, unaware that my friend's older brother, standing directly behind me, was about to get in with not one, but 2 shirts on. My 5-year-old daughter asked how our pregnant neighbor's baby was going to get out and I gave her a brief, but factual, explanation. She was surprised that something so big could pop out of someplace so small, and I confirmed her suspicion that childbirth, including hers, was painful. She shook her head sympathetically and said, "Well, it's too bad babies don't come out your butt, because yours is so big it wouldn't hurt at all." Self-repost, but perfect for this topic. My mom says that when I was little, my dad asked me, "Isn't your mom the prettiest mom in the whole world?" and I replied, "No, but I love her anyway." I think that's sweet. In grade 4, my slightly overweight teacher mentioned offhandedly that she went to the gym. One of my classmates piped up, in an incredulous tone, "You go to the gym?" Silence from the teacher. So much awkward. I think when you're in grade 4 you know when you're hurting someone's feelings. My best friend's wife died a year ago from a brain aneurysm. Recently his 3-year-old daughter looked at both of us and said, "Daddy, I want to die so I can go see mommy." Overall, the saddest day of my life was at the hospital with him when he told all 3 of his children, all under 10, that their mom was dead. Jesus Christ, man. That's quite possibly one of the saddest things I've ever read. My ex-wife came from the backwoods of White Hickville, Florida Panhandle. She had to drive into the city to go to the DMV, and took her 3-year-old son. He saw his first black person in town, and announced loudly to the room, "Look mama, a chocolate man." She said the guy laughed it off and got down to his level to talk to him while they waited in line, but she was so mortified she could barely speak. I had finished showering my then 2-year-old son and had just finished my own shower. My son comes running up to and says excitedly, "Dad, I have a penis." I then responded, "Yes son, all boys have a penis. Dad has one just like you do." At which point he says, "No daddy, I have a big penis." As a fellow grower, I really despise showers, even if they are 2 years old. I wrote about this before, but my daughter said he probably tripped over his vagina when her uncle asked why his son, her cousin, was crying. She had just learned the word and used it all the time. This is pure gold. I'm so using this. My ex cheated on me. She made me sad. One of my sons went up to her weeks later when she was dropping off their half-brother and said straight to her, "Have you said sorry to daddy yet?" My little boys totally have my back. My 4-year-old said, "You are a bad man for making mommy cry. She loved you very much, and you broke it at her heart." Cheating ex, of course. Mommy, why don't play with me or buy me as much toys as other parents do? Might seem like a little, but I was a struggling single mother who did everything to put a smile on my son's face. Seeing his face when he said that really put a knife through my heart. When I was 9, I told my Jewish grandfather that the fact that he didn't celebrate Christmas was why Hitler wanted to kill him. It all makes sense now. Hitler was only trying to save Christmas. I saw a young kid ask a soldier, why aren't you normal? Why do you have robot arms? He was a double amputee. Kid didn't mean it in a bad way, but the soldier was fresh out of the hospital and still not adjusted well. Very awkward and sad. Soldier didn't hold it against the kid. I honestly hope the kid doesn't remember. If I grew up later and realized what I said, I'd feel a huge need to somehow apologize to that guy. My cousin was about 3 years when an overweight woman sat down near him in a train. He then asked loudly, "Mommy, why does that woman stink so bad?" "'Cause she can't reach her butt to wipe. Honey, now pinch your nose shut. We're almost home." In a cafe, when I was 4, I once asked my mum why the black man sitting next to us hadn't washed his dirty face. Everybody was mortified. My cousins and I were taking a walk around a neighborhood while playing the car points game. You get more or less points for different types of cars you spot. Their version included a lot of things other than cars, including runners. I argued that runners weren't worth points, and that it wasn't fair. This prompted my cousin to shout out, "Hey you, runner, you're worthless." I then continued the shout, "Yeah, even that car over there is worth something, but you're not. You're just a human. You have no worth." The runner stopped and stared at us in a scared manner. I believe he thought we were a much more existential lot than we were. I used to babysit 3 kids 2 years ago. There was one named Chase that would scream at the top of his lungs and then squint his eyes and ever so calmly say, "I'm gonna cut you." He was 3. That's terrifying. I don't know why, but it is. When my brother, he was about 7 at the time, met my great uncle, a World War II hero who lost his arm in battle when a grenade exploded nearby, he said, "Can I ask you something? Why didn't you duck?" My great uncle laughed pretty hard and spent the rest of the day playing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures with us. Don't remember how old I was, but I told my pregnant neighbor I was going to punch her in the stomach and kill her baby when she was babysitting me and told me it was bedtime. Still feel bad about that one. A decade later, I actually did punch my pregnant mother in the tummy when she made me mad. Don't know if I was trying to punish her by killing the baby, but it didn't work. "I like mommy more than you." Heard a child say that to her dad in a park. I know a lot of kids have a stronger bond with their mother, but that would have crushed me. Conversation between some 8-year-old in my in-law family and her grandma, a few weeks after her grandfather died. "Grandma, it's raining so hard it looks like heaven is open." 8-year-old, "If heaven is open, can granddaddy fall down from there?" "Grandma, he won't fall. He is just a weightless spirit now." 8-year-old, "I don't think he is weightless. It took 6 people to carry the coffin." I went to pick up my daughter from my in-laws and my daughter turned to me and said, "Mommy, I want you to leave right now. I don't want you. I want you to leave without me. Kill me. If it helps." It's possible she was just having such a good time that she didn't want to leave, and the only way she thought to express it was by wishing you hadn't shown up when you did. When I was about 5 or 6, my mom had skin cancer. My best friend at the time, same age, said quite matter-of-factly, "You know that means she's going to die, right?" Complete monotone. No emotion. Obviously, I was crushed and I didn't say anything to my mom about it for like 2 weeks, because I thought it was some huge secret and I didn't want to make my mom upset in her final days. However, 2 weeks was a heck of a long time, and the fact that she wasn't in the hospital worried me. I broke down crying and asked how long she had left. Mom was really upset and called my friend's mom to rectify the situation. I think my friend got lectured and grounded for her bluntness. Please follow this up with an "and she didn't actually die but recovered." I hope. I did not say anything, but one time I drew a huge swastika on a giant, foggy window in a full hotel lobby. Saw it on TV once. Parents not amused. My English brother and I once got told off by our parents for shouting bombs away while jumping into a swimming pool in Germany. I used to live in an apartment complex and one day I was walking to the parking lot and this kid, about 2-3 years old, was yelling down at me from a 3rd-story balcony. I'd never seen this kid before. "Kid, hey you, me, hey, what's up, buddy?" "Kid, I don't love you." "Hey, I don't love you." "Me, okay, I don't love you either." What an butthole thing to say to somebody. When I was 7, I walked up to my mom who was in the garden. I asked her, "Mommy, why are you crying?" She ignored me. "Mommy, why are you crying? You know daddy says mean things. Why are you crying?" At that point she realized she couldn't hide what my dad was doing. She thought she was. She also got a divorce after years of abuse. I don't even remember saying that. My mom recounted this for me. My little sister once asked the rest of the family, "Why are old people allowed to vote if they're going to die soon anyway?" My family was temporarily speechless. She makes a good point. As a toddler, I asked my mother, "Do those cracks in your face hurt?" I was asking about her wrinkles. It's a story I'll never live down in my family. My 4-year-old daughter was making a get well card for my ill grandmother. When she finished drawing, I asked her what message she wanted to write on the inside. Her response: "Dear great grandma, you're not dead yet. Stealing this for all future get well soon cards. Thank you." Me age 4. Dad, I want to be just like you when I grow up. Dad and mum together. AWW, that's very sweet comrade. Me. Yeah, cause mum doesn't do anything. Stay at home mum. Apparently my dad removed me from the room very quickly before my mother could explode equals P. Mother and little boy, 5 or 6, walking in the parking lot towards a liquor store with him pulling her and crying, "Mommy, no, no, you don't need any alcohol. Don't be so quick to judge." My dad used to take me on errands all the time and I hated it. Whenever we had to stop by the liquor store to pick up wine as a gift or something, I would make a huge fuss just to make him look bad. Sweet revenge. I used to teach 2nd grade. I put on a coat. Kid, why are you putting your coat on? Me, because I'm cold. Kid, how can you be so cold if you have so much fat and blubber? 1. My mom has moles on her face. A 2-year-old was laying with her on the couch, pointing at each mark and blemish asking what they were. "That's a mole. What about that one, also a mole?" And so on for 5 minutes. Then he takes her face in his hands in a serious way and says, "Your face is a mess." 2 weeks after I had my baby, my friend's son asked me, "Is there another baby in your belly? Ouch, little sucker." My 5-year-old son caught me crying this week after we got the news that our 11-year-old chocolate lab had cancer and needed to be put down. He asked me why I was sad and I explained that Casey was sick and would die soon. His answer: "It's okay daddy, don't be sad, we can just buy another dog." Years ago, I woke up very late for work and still needed to get my 4-year-old to daycare. I said to her something to the effect of, "Hurry up, we have to leave. We don't have time for anything. I'm not even putting makeup on. Let's go." She said something to the effect, "You cannot take me to school if you're not wearing makeup, that would be embarrassing." My mother at the store with my 3-year-old brother, who she's been desperately trying to potty train to little effect for months. "Bro, I want Smarties." "Mom, I can only afford either diapers or candy. Your choice." "Bro, better get diapers then." "Look dad, I'm totally freaking up that mother." Yeah, that's good son." A 6-year-old playing GTA SA in a house that clearly had more means than will to raise a kid. Felt awkward the whole time I was there. To be fair, need to be fricked up. My wife worked with a woman who had a very low level position, below CNA I think, at a hospital. The woman's husband had ran off with a young girl and left her with 6 kids. She was living in a single wide trailer and not really making it. They were friends, so we decided we would go grocery shopping for her. Bought her a few $100 worth of stuff and drove it to her house. She was so happy she was in tears. Then one of our twins, who is about 6 at the time, pulls on her mom's shirt and say very loudly, "Wow mom, you were right. They are really poor." She was very cool about it, but you could tell her feelings were really hurt. My neighbor was having trouble parking her car, so she knocked on my door and asked me to do it for her. She had cut the wheel too soon getting into the space, and was unable to get the door open to get her kid out. She apparently was a new driver and was having problems backing out to try again. So I climb in the car to repark it. The kid is in her car seat in the back, and what does she say? "Are you my daddy?" What's the worst case of rich kid syndrome you've seen? I've posted this before, and I need to say first off the bat that this is about my best friend and she is the best person I know, i.e. not normally rich kid or anything. I was complaining about how I was short on money one month, just couldn't go out to eat, because I had to pay rent and pay for tag renewal all in the same paycheck. She looked at me, super seriously, and was like, don't worry, they send you those in the mail for free. After a long discussion she learned that in fact, her mom had been paying for her new tags every year. I worked as a bouncer at a high-end nightclub, the biggest boner of a rich kid, straight out of Malibu's Most Wanted, gets a VIP booth and bottle service, racks up a massive bill trying to act like a baller. His credit card gets denied and he has to call his dad to come down at 1:30 AM because he can't order any more bottles. His dad comes down in his pajamas, obviously ashamed and furious at this douche of a kid, ends up embarrassing the crap out of his kid in front of his whole group of friends. He takes the kid's keys and is about to leave when his kid makes some crappy comment and goes back in the club. The dad's about to walk away after he apologizes for his son when we offer to drag him out the rough way. He smiles and accepts. That kid hit every door and step on the way out. Not the best story, but was one of the most satisfying experiences working at that club. Don't know if it qualifies as rich kid syndrome, but when I got out of the Navy I decided to use my GI Bill at one of the Penn State satellites. I was sitting in the cafeteria drinking coffee and typing up a paper when a girl sits down across from me and opens her backpack. She pulls out a sandwich bag and looks at it in disgust, then looks me dead in the eye and says, I don't even know why I bother, my mother never cuts off the crust. I let out one of those high-pitched short laughs like, is this girl for real? Oblivious to the tone of it she says, I know right, then asks me if I want it. I looked around thinking I was getting pranked or something cause this crap is too stereotypical to be real and I just assumed I was being filmed. She shook it at me and gave me a well look. So I said frick it and took the sandwich. She then pulled out her student id card and bought a crap ton of french fries. That sandwich was awesome. I think the bread was homemade and it was stacked like a dagwood. It had all kinds of expensive looking meats and Dijon mustard. Serious gourmet crap. I know this girl's mother will never see this, but I just wanna say someone appreciated that sandwich. Stacked like a dagwood. You, sir or madam, have a respectable knowledge of sandwiches and comics. This case isn't too bad, and it's a bit funny. I became friends with a kid whose family was really well off. He was a really nice bloke, but a bit sheltered, and university was the first time he really had any independence, but he had very little sense of what the value of a dollar really was since his folks got him what he usually wanted, compared to what normal people would spend. There was one particular time he wanted us to eat at a restaurant, and he assured us it's really good, so we all rocked up to this place and the price for main courses started at $40 to $60, which as poor uni students we couldn't afford. But when he realized this he was so embarrassed. He's finally wised up a few years later once he got more independent away from his family and made his own money, and remains one of the best blokes I know. In high school a kid was bragging that he got in his third fender bender in his old car. 3 years old, that his parents gave him but he hated, so his parents were buying him an entirely new, current year, car to incentivize him to drive better. My mom's friend used to buy new clothes each season and throw out the old ones. She had to be taught by her husband to save them for the next year. Worked with this kid who was a good kid, but completely disconnected from financial reality for most people. He'd just moved out west from another state and was trying to get on like a normal adult. He went to buy a new car and was shocked that they couldn't just bill his dad for it, since they didn't know him. He ordered a bottle of wine at a restaurant and the sommelier said certainly. So then the sommelier whispered, just for your knowledge, sir, the bottle is $700. He looked straight at him and asked, is that a lot? The sommelier honestly didn't know how to answer. Good kid, and he got a lot better, but he just didn't know. Once he casually told his mom he needed some help with bills and she deposited $20,000 into his account. A guy looked at my $2,000 beta car in college and commented that it must have been really cheap and guessed $15,000. LOL, I'd have offered to sell it to him as a demolition car or something for that price. I worked at a Starbucks and we hired a new guy, who I was training. At one point, I had to show him how to clean the restrooms. I grab the bleach and hand him a pair of gloves, and he looks at me in disgust and says, "We don't have a maid to clean the bathrooms?" He quit the next day, lol. When I was in boarding school, one of my co-boarders handed me some mail saying, "Do you notice anything special about this envelope?" When I checked it out, I realized his face was on the stamp. He was royalty. Went to a destination wedding in Mexico resort. Rich kids rented a golf cart, tore through the streets and flipped the cart, injuring people and causing a huge commotion and traffic jam. A Mexican lady comes out and begins to scold them for their behavior. "You wouldn't act this way at home." Rich kid responds, "I promise you we do." It was the earnestness of his reply that got me. I would hope those kids earned themselves a sandal to the head. One girl from my high school got breast implants for her 18th birthday. Her mom joined her as a mother-daughter bonding activity, followed by the daughter getting a brand new $90,000 Mercedes as a high school graduation gift. I work for a dentist and her son is a spoiled brat. He was at the office one day because she had to bring him to an appointment later that day. He got bored and went out wandering around some of the local shops. He came back a little while later and without any preamble walked up to her and said, "Give me $80. She asked him what it was for and he just repeated himself and she gave it to him. That kid's going to have major issues in life later on with that kind of attitude. This is pretty tame, but it's what I got. I used to work as an after-school babysitter for a loaded doctor couple with 2 kids. My job was mainly to pick up the younger kid from school and hang out till his parents got home. He was a good kid, but coddled and immature. He was in 5th or 6th grade at this point. Oftentimes he would not be at his classroom when I came to get him, and the school campus was huge. Different buildings, courtyards, playgrounds, the works. If he wasn't at his classroom, I had to comb the whole campus, and he was rarely in the same place twice. He had a cell phone, but usually ignored its existence except for playing games on it in the car. The school was in the city and I had to park on the street. A couple of times I wound up with parking tickets because, despite having stuffed the meter with enough quarters to presumably result in ample time, the search for my charge would take much longer than anticipated. After a point, I mentioned this to him, calmly asking that he respect my time and stay in a set location so that I don't end up with a $25 ticket again. He looked at me with a good-natured shrug and said, "Well, that's not much. You can afford that. Sonny, your parents paid me $140 a week and I was in college. I know you live in a $1.40 million house and your dad buys you an expensive new toy every Sunday, but with the money they're forking over for your education, someone ought to have taught you the value of a dollar by now." But honestly, he was a nice kid. They moved away and I hope he's doing well. Should have told his parents. They could have paid your ticket. After all, it's not that much. This kid back in high school was whining, I mean literally whimpering, that he had to wait something like 6 weeks for his custom-built BMW to come over from Germany. If that was me, I'd be surprised it only took 6 weeks to custom build a car and ship it from another country. I don't really know anything about cars. That just seems like a short time period to custom build and ship such a large item. I've waited longer than for 99p crap on eBay. Went to HS with this insufferably spoiled kid. Family had a couch in their home's elevator and classical European sculpture. This was in the US. Kid talked down to about the less fortunate on a regular basis. Once made fun of me for picking a coin up off the ground. What an actual douche he is. A friend of mine inherited a lot of money, enough to buy a house, and he spent it on 2 cars. A Subaru completely modded to Ken Block's version of it and some BMW. Both extremely expensive. We asked him a few months later why he didn't buy a house with it because he still lived with his parents. So he told us that he already owned a penthouse. He just didn't want to move yet. Knew this one guy at my college who didn't understand why everybody is so worked up about student loans. I remember him saying something along the lines of, "Why don't people just pay the tuition up front?" He was also quite sheltered. "Just stop being poor, God." I could absolutely survive on my own. My parents just pay for my food and house, but I pay for everything else. If I got a job, I could pay for my food and house too. Said at 18, in the middle of a discussion between 2 middle class peers who were talking about saving money because they had to pay for their own college and living expenses. About 5 minutes prior to this conversation, both peers had ordered the cheap dinner options and declined a shopping trip later that night, while rich girl was talking non-stop about buying the best most expensive souvenirs for her friends. Once tried working a regular person retail job and quit within a couple weeks as it just wasn't right and I didn't like it. Reed had actual responsibilities for the first time, but moved cross country for an 8-month education course where her parents pay food, rent, and school. They also gave her a debit card which replenishes up to $500 when it hits $50. She still posts Snapchats with captions of that broke person life over pictures of her getting Starbucks every day, and insists she could survive on her own. Constantly suggests the most expensive options for meals, activities, etc. and tax on things like we can just split the bill. I know you're saving but it's just amount at least $50. You'll be fine, right? Then gets upset when people can't afford to spend time with her, or when someone dares to suggest that she helps cover costs. Friend got a theater with an arcade built over their family's 12-car garage. Parents didn't want the 5-year-old sister to be jealous, so they hired an architect to design and build her a fully functioning playhouse with a bathroom, AC, and bedroom. Just the tip of the iceberg with this family though. Update. Lots of comments. I will try to round out the image. And for what it's worth, no, neither I nor my family is rich. We just lived really close to the family and my dad and mother became close friends with them. They were on the whole really nice and innocent people drunken on the spoils of wealth. I can say I genuinely love the family. Firstly, one commenter was correct. This is not really rich kid syndrome. And no, these are not normal rich people. These are ultra rich, probably richer now than they were then. For example, George Bush Jr. visited the family's house to hold a fundraiser for his second campaign. This was not a typical rich family. Their father built a mini racetrack for his Lotus Esprits at his lake house. Also built a mega yacht with a garage for what most of us would consider a large boat on it. Surprise. He never really used it more than once or twice. An impulse purchase. The house, more aptly called a castle, was filled with game from African safaris taken in the 70s and 80s. The wife bought a popular fast food franchise unavailable in our area because she didn't like having to drive 30 minutes to get what she wanted. Once when I was swimming in the waterfall pool with the son, my mom called and reminded them I need to be home for some sports event or something, and we hopped in their Bentley dripping wet. It was the first time my feet ever touched a fur floor in a car, soaking wet at that. At the Millennium, the father was into tattoos and regularly spent tens of thousands to fly the best tattoo artists in world and from Japan and LA to work on his Yakuza style sash tattoo. I could go on, but the number one thing that I think might qualify one in the family for rich kid syndrome is that the father, who inherited his family business from his father, sold the business overseas in the late 80s. The company was the only reason the town had to exist. Ever since, the community has been recognized as the most depressed in the state, and the school's unequivocally the worst. Who the frick has a 12-car garage? My fiance's cousin. He managed to crash 4 cars while still in high school because his father would replace them. When he moved on to college, he got kicked out of several apartments for owning a dog when they weren't permitted. He told me he didn't care though, since his father also funded his continuous stream of new housing. From what I last heard, his father is now paying for his long-standing C habit. Someone's sister got $600 shoes so the parents got the other kid's shoes of the same price to stop their complaining. Holy crap, somehow this is the one that got me. I wouldn't say rich kid but definitely spoiled brat who thought he was rich. Befriended him in 5th grade over our interest in the UGR trading card game. First time I hung out at his place I noticed just how littered with stuff his room was, some even unopened. I showed him some rare card that I had recently pulled from a pack. He got super jealous and angry that I wouldn't trade or sell it to him. He immediately got up and walked over to the family computer and booted up a site where you could buy cards and various other toys and such. Completely ignoring having me over, he's now on an online shopping spree adding stuff to the cart. After adding a few things he yells, "Where's the credit card?" and immediately his older sister comes running up the stairs to yell, "Kyle, Mom said no more buying stuff online and closes the website and shuts off the computer. Kyle then proceeds to have a crying tantrum on the floor and I'm just standing there over him in shock at what's happening and how he's acting. I slowly stopped hanging out with him until completely avoiding him as his temperament got worse. Kid wasn't even rich either if I remember correctly. Both of his parents were cops. Babysat some rich kids. A couple gems were when we were watching a movie and she said someone was ugly because they were poor. Another was that they left their stove at the side of the road for hobos. Kid was about 11. Went to school with a crazy rich kid. His parents divorced and each decided to buy his love. Mommy owned a real estate agency, so she got him a license and spoon fed him enough sales for a 6-figure income. The dad then bought him a magazine. Yes, the dad bought a magazine for his 24-year-old cokehead son to run. Worked about as well as you'd imagine. So my best friend's wife teaches at a ritzy $40,000 per year private school. As in, $40,000 a year for elementary and middle school. I think the HS is like $50,000 plus. Well, she teaches 7th or 8th grade. I can't remember. And she said she always goes around the class after the summer break and asks them what they did over the summer, and she particularly remembers one kid complaining about how much his summer sucked because he was stuck on his parents' yacht all summer and they didn't even take it to anywhere cool, just Italy. I know it's an insanely privileged thing to do, but I wouldn't like being stuck on a boat with my parents for a month or two either. This girl would always brag about how she's been to every continent except Antarctica and that she's visited so many countries. Then she wondered why people called her the rich kid and insisted she wasn't rich. To be fair, I am in no way rich yet. I've been to every continent except Antarctica and dozens of countries. You just need to get a job on a cruise ship. Low pay, long stressful hours, but perks like that. I was tossing the football in my friend's place and we almost hit his expensive TV. His response was, "Don't worry, my dad will just buy me another one." Luckily the only rich kids I knew were the most outstandingly well-behaved boys I've ever met. I was a youth leader in a ministry for middle schoolers, and I think the worst it ever got was them being mildly disruptive at times. But these kids had a literal half-sized basketball court in their basement, along with a basement the size of a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment, an arcade, a fully stocked second fridge. Don't even get me started on the house itself and the yard. This place easily would list at least as $1 million home. But they would share with all the kids in the group and never ever look down on anyone for not having money like them. These boys even helped me change a flat tire on my car because they felt it was useful to know how. They literally could probably afford a tow truck and a tire repair all in the same day if it ever happened to them. They were so well grounded that it made me feel like I was the spoiled brat at times. We know parents like that. They're rich, like large multiple wing house with pool, jacuzzi, etc. But the kids are so down to earth. They have after school jobs to save up college money. They're kind and respectful. I'm not even sure they're aware of how rich they are. I've seen this Aussie guy in a Thai pub on Koh Samui. He wanted to show bar girls that he's rich and lit up his cigarette using a burning 1,000 baht bill. He probably did not know how Thais love their king, and that the king just recently died, and his face is on the bill. The rich kid got his butt kicked so hard. Sorry for my English, but hopefully you can understand what I mean. One of my friend's friends ended up paying for a night out food and entertainment. He'd go up before we got the bill and just pay. No matter how much we argued with him and tried to pay him back, wouldn't take it. Nice dude, bad baller rich. Why don't you just get a pass to Disney and Universal? The people at my school TBH cannot fathom having multiple spiders in their house in a week. Well, obviously you need to release spiders in their homes. Adrian Broner, a boxer, though he was not born rich but became rich in his 20s. If you are not going by what Felix Dennis considers rich, he was supposed to be the next boxing superstar but was beaten badly and exposed. He put out a video of him in line at Walmart. He paid with a $100 bill and threw the change on the ground, saying he is ab and only deals in 100s. This is a man who had 7 children by 8 women at 23, 6 years ago, and who knows how many now. He had to settle a $1 million jewelry debt earlier this year. 8 children by 7 women. Diego Maradona, hold my C. My friend literally throws away his change because he hates holding coins. Doesn't matter if it's 99 cents, he'll throw it away. That crap adds up. In middle school we were asked to draw our homes for some assignment and hand it in at the end of class. A popular, extremely wealthy kid that sat behind me raised his hand and smugly asked the teacher for another sheet of paper because he couldn't draw it all on one page. His friends just snickered, but I was cringing. Even at 12 I remember thinking it was such a snobby thing to say. I had a girl like that in French class high school. We had to draw and label our house floor plan in Francais, and Kat raised her hand and asks how many floors because she kind of lives in a mansion. For other purposes Kat was pretty cool, but she bragged about her wealth a lot. I work at a country club, and on the 4th of July, while I was working, a little girl asked why we were closing at 7 instead of staying open all night. I told her I wanted to get to do sparklers and fireworks with my family too. She thought about it, looked back at me and said, but you all aren't real people. I just had to laugh and inform her I was indeed real and all my co-workers weren't just the slaves of the country club. Wild man. I used to think that I was the only real person and the other people in life just weren't, I guess. When I was around 6, it was whack, and I don't know how the heck I had that mentality. Maybe this girl was the same. Bragging is one of my pet peeves. There's a co-worker that constantly brags of how her mom buys her purses, nails, and hair done. The co-worker makes decent money. Why can't she buy her own and stop mooching bragging? Or just enjoy it without bragging? What about Dallas kid who killed those others in a drunken car wreck, then used the "I'm too rich for consequences" defense? Or that kid from Baylor who raped a girl and only got expelled? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.